Hi, everybody, and welcome to Salesforce.org Architect Academy, where we're going to be talking about the UC Davis Food Pantry application today. And I'm really excited to talk to the team from UC Davis that developed this. I'm Tom Letty, the Director of Strategy and Transformation Services at Salesforce.org. And then we'll kind of go down the list. And Bryce, if you want to.
My name is Bryce Jacobs. I am the product manager at the ASUCD Pantry at UC Davis. I've served as a volunteer for a little while on the Pantry's team, and now I'm leading the effort of the development of the system that we'll talk about today.
Derek?
Yeah, my name is Derek. I am one of the lead software engineers for the Pantry project at the ASUCD Pantry at UC Davis.
And Soumya?
Hi, my name is Soumya Durseti, and I'm a full stack developer here at ASUCD Pantry at UC Davis.
And Austin?
Yeah, my name is Austin. I'm another full stack developer here. And you can also see my email down at the bottom.
And forward-looking statement, we're probably not going to be talking about new products here, but just in case, make sure you're not making any purchases based on anything we talk about here, and you're only purchasing things that are already for sale. And again, thank you to everybody for attending these Architect Academy sessions. So just a little bit of background about Architect Academy. So our mission is to increase the success of our Salesforce.org customers and partners by increasing the number of architects and also expanding the knowledge of our existing architects who serve our nonprofit and education customers. So let's start out with how did we, if you guys want to give a little bit about of the background of how you got involved.
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, I volunteered at the Pantry before, back when we could do stuff more in person. But after the pandemic hit and the lockdown hit, I looked for ways to volunteer my time online remotely. And I talked with the director of the Pantry, Ryan Choi, and we talked about how there's really a need for some online and digital solution for some of what the Pantry faces in terms of things like line management and food management, general organization. Austin, if you want to share your story.
Yeah, so I knew Bryce for a few years. At the start of the pandemic, a lot of internships were getting canceled. So I was looking for work. And Bryce called me up and said, hey, you got an opportunity for you. And it was like, oh, I can help people and get software development experience. Sign me up. So it was just a great segue and haven't looked back since.
Very cool. Now, did you see a spike in business at the food pantry as a result of the pandemic? Or
Great question. We've actually seen a sharp decrease just due to the stay-at-home order. A very good number, very high portion of UC Davis students have left Davis either to return to their homes in other towns, states, or countries. So we have seen a sharp decline, but we do expect that as soon as there's more of an opportunity for students to come back and take classes in person, we are actually expecting it could increase relative to pre-pandemic numbers, but that has yet to be seen. Derek, did you want to talk about how you got involved?
Oh, yeah. I'd say that, before getting onto the Pantry, I was working on a lot of full stack development projects, personal projects that I like to work on my own. And I was being scouted by actually Bryce and Austin, and they saw my skills and thought, he knows a bit about like full stack development. How about we bring him on? And coming on, I was actually relatively new to the Pantry. I had to learn how to use Salesforce from the ground up. And after like a couple weeks in, I was making features, I was contributing, and it was just a really rewarding experience, seeing how I'm able to contribute to my career and also to my peers at UC Davis.
that is cool. That's one of the best things about the platform too, is how quickly you can pick things up and run with them.
Excellent. And Soumya, if you'd like to briefly share.
Yeah, definitely. So the way I got involved with the ASUCD Pantry was, weirdly enough, my freshman year. I got involved with just food waste and food insecurity in general from a political science and a food science perspective. I had taken a lot of classes. I talked to professors. I'd worked on, if you can believe it, I worked on the fake meat. If you've ever heard of the news about it, but there's a lot of research going on at UC Davis about it. And I worked on that from just working on the Python end of things. And then I started doing engineering related projects with food waste, working at these community fridges and using APIs and Raspberry Pis to use artificial intelligence so that it can track what exactly is in the fridge at the time and display it on the website. And then later, when Bryce told me about this project here at the ASUCD Pantry, I was chuffed. I was beyond excited to start using my computer science skills that I've been learning in school in such an impactful way. I've had the opportunity to author stuff, to be an advocate from the ground up, to volunteer with the food bank directly and work with the director of the pantry, Ryan Choi, on multiple occasions. But this was just such an amazing opportunity to use all the interests that I have and the skills that I have to make something as awesome as this is. And I've been happy that I did that because now I feel I had such a rewardful experience joining the pantry.
That is really cool. Also, I'll just as a side note to that, I'm actually a vegetarian and I love my Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers. So glad to hear that you helped do some research into that.
So when we were looking at, how to really build this online system, we considered a couple options, one of which was, of course, just building really everything from the ground up without having a platform, but just really getting access to some hardware, seeing what open source code already existed for, setting up a website for this, looking into hosting services. But really, Salesforce just offered the whole package. Things like hosting, the platform, the pre-existing, just the tools for very easily going from either basic code or really nothing up to a working product so quickly. It was an amazing offer or amazing opportunity and a really generous offer, giving nonprofits the P10, the free 10 user licenses.
Kind of like you said, the power of the platform. It's like you can, if you need to write some additional code to add some enhancements to the basic functionality of the platform, that's fine, but you've already got that foundation that you're building on top of instead of starting completely from zero. So, yeah,
absolutely. And perhaps one more thing to mention is just the fact that Salesforce encourages and requires employees to volunteer some of their time, I think has been enormously helpful because we've had so much help from solutions engineers and architects, and in general, people who have had just the knowledge of how to use Salesforce to help us when we were really getting started. So that was really helpful to have.
Second, and it's actually one of the reasons why I came to work for Salesforce myself is for that exact same reason. So a little bit about some statistics here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, we did see a decrease in the number of students at the pantry after the pandemic hit. But before that, we saw that about 20% of UC Davis students were being served by the pantry. Now, for context, UC Davis has a student body of over 30,000 students. So this is not a small operation. This is something that has taken quite a lot of work. And honestly, I want to give a really big shout out to Ryan Choi, the pantry director, for working on making the pantry what it is today and being able to serve all the students who are currently being served. Because another statistic is 39% of undergraduates at UC Davis are reported that they were food insecure as of a survey taken last year. This really highlights the need for the presence of the pantry and other organizations for addressing food insecurity. Now, for specifically how this translates into the online system and what we did with Salesforce, the need for things like line management and inventory management are how we came to the conclusion that okay, we need to have a digital presence. It can't just all be in person. So before we made this system, the pantry did not actually have comprehensive inventory management. They would receive invoices from the local food bank when they would buy, but beyond that, they didn't have a very consistent system for tracking donations, for tracking food that came in and went out. How food used to be distributed was students would just show up and line up, and then when it was their turn, they could go into the physical pantry space, pick out a few items, and then leave. But the lines would often be like an hour long, and would wrap around the side of the building. So that was already inconvenient when it was cold outside or raining. In COVID times now, it's just unfeasible to have a densely packed line. So we needed line management to address the long waiting times and people standing close together. So we realized we needed an online ordering system to basically allow students to say ahead of time what they wanted, so they could just come in, quickly pick up their food and leave, and minimize exposure time, and thus minimizing the risk of spreading COVID-19, but also allowing the pantry to serve more students more effectively. And in order to have that, we needed an inventory management system. So that's really how we went through the full stack, so to speak, of all the different parts of this project.
And actually, just looking at the numbers too, it was a good call out that, UC Davis serves 30,000 students. So if 20% of them are served by the food pantry, I mean, I know you saw some declines, but you're still it's still a significant number of people that are relying on the food pantry. And so it's not like you got 5 people coming up per day or anything. You're still going to design this to scale pretty well, even given the current times, right?
I think that's an excellent point. Yeah, this the 20% number was pre-pandemic numbers, but even still, it's not 5 people per day. It's maybe 5 people per 10 minutes. I don't know what the current numbers are, but we still have a sizable patronage of the pantry.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into capabilities and processes.
Yeah, so as a quick overview of the 2 sides of the system, it does all function as one whole system, but really you can view it as the inventory side of things, which is much more focused on the pantry staff and workers, and then the ordering side of things, which is much more focused on the patrons. For the inventory side, there's of course inventory entry. Before we made this, the pantry didn't really have a system for keeping track of the food that came in. So we needed a way to keep track of the invoices from the local food bank, which represents, at last count, about 80% of the food that we take in. And then also individual item entries when we get in-kind donations.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's generally inventory management. We need a central database, a nice interface for the pantry staff to use, having basically a table displaying all the food items, information about them, generally providing an interface that's convenient for any of the staff members to use to just track and manipulate the numbers, to update them as food comes in and goes out. And then on the ordering side of things, like I mentioned, we wanted to reduce the line and serve more patrons. So we made a custom ordering system. So students at UC Davis who need to get food can pick a time slot when they'll come in. So we know how many people are going to come in and when. They can select food items. They can select anything that we put on our inventory or in our inventory database. So anything that they would normally be able to pick up should be available online for them to select. They simply place their order ahead of time and come in at the time that they signed up for. So it reduces the amount of time that they have to wait. It reduces the risk for everyone involved. And it allows us to keep a better track of inventory so we can be more mindful with it and serve more students. And then finally for order management, and really this is the part of the order system that's more focused on the staff of the pantry. We made a nice little interface for them to get a summary, a list of all the orders per day, so that they could keep track of, as people come in, sort of check them in, say, okay, you ordered, maybe 2 bags of rice and 3 cans of beans. Okay, perfect. I've got your order right here. Order number 103. Here you go. To allow for a more systematized and effective means of distributing food.
This is pretty interesting. So you've got coming in, you've got a PDF, and then you've got your that's with order. Oh, by the way, this is my cat, Jimmy. He likes to join these calls sometimes. And then what you've got is it's initially going into a staff database, right? With all the orders from
Yeah. So what happens is the pantry worker will, like you have there, upload a PDF and it'll be put into the Salesforce database as a custom object. And it'll also send the PDF to an external integration, which is called Doc Parser, which we'll talk about more later. And so Doc Parser API is what actually does the parsing, and that's what extracts the line contents from it. And when Doc Parser is done parsing, there's like a webhook set up, so it'll know when it's done parsing. It'll send it back to our database and insert it as a bunch of new custom objects. We just call it pending food. We'll get more into it later. And then after it's sent back, at that point, then on the invoice page, there's like a confirmation table, which displays all those newly inserted objects, the pending foods. Okay. And the pantry worker can then say, I want to confirm this, or I want to deny this invoice, just to, make sure that the contents were parsed correctly. And if they do click confirm, then those pending foods will be transformed into actual foods. So we have a food database and we have a pending food database. Foods are what are actually stored all in the backend for the pantry, and pending food is just what needs to be approved from the invoices. So it's sort of like a airlock, like verification system almost.
Awesome. And then we'll come back to the slides in a minute, but I want to make sure I got at least the high level of what we're covering here. And then on the order side, we've got it looks like, so you've got a synchronization between the actual staff facing databases, which is kind of these objects here, and then what's actually visible to somebody that wants to place an order, right?
Yeah, so in terms of synchronization, it's all of the food is just stored as a custom object in the Salesforce database. And the views that the staff and patrons see are actually referring to just the same database, the same table. The only difference is in terms of like permissions. We, of course, give staff a much more comprehensive view of things like the ability to edit thresholds, for example, things like how many items we want to keep in stock at any given time, order limits, how many like bags of rice patrons can order at once, and then of course the ability to edit any information that's necessary. And then what the patrons see is they just see a list of all of the food and other items as well. We also have hygiene products and other things that are available, and the quantity that the max quantity that they can order. And they can also see a separate list of specific items that they've picked out. But it does, even though there are different fields shown in the different views, it is pulling from the same database.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So your patrons are basically seeing what is actually orderable, and then exactly. The staff see some additional information. Yeah, that makes sense. And then you're using sharing roles and
yeah. Derek and Somi, feel free to chime in as well. But the way I understand it is what we mostly do is we mostly deal with pantry workers who have a Salesforce license account and they can just log into their Salesforce account, and then guest users, which are just our customers. So what we usually do is we go to the actual site and then we just set the permissions there. So just change the guest user permissions for each site every time we make a new site.
I gotcha. So licensed accounts, that makes sense. So that's your staff, and then you've got your guest users, which are your patrons. So
yeah, chiming in on that as well, because we have like specific permissions for each user. This also correlates to the objects and how they're going to be viewed. So some users may be able to access those objects, but other users, they don't really have those access. So that's the delineating feature between them.
Yeah, so even within the staff, you've got your individual, your profiles and permission sets that you've got assigned. So some staff can see certain things that other staff members can't.
Right.
All right, let's go back here.
Most of our tools are built using MVC, which
Right.
is Model View Controller. And for anyone watching who doesn't necessarily know what Model View Controller is, it's that diagram basically on the left. It's an interaction between model, view, and controller. So the user will interact with the view. That'll update the controller, and that controller will in turn update the model, and it'll relay its way all back to the view to update the view. So in our case, let's say our order page, for example. The user interacts with the screen and adds item to their food bag on the order page. That's the visual force, that's the view. It updates the controller, which is our Apex, and that has like an array of the current foods that they're ordering. And when they actually click like the order now button, it will update the system and put that array of foods, say like, oh, we need to put these on hold now. And so that'll update our Salesforce database, and that'll in turn re-render all the way back to the view and reflect the new updated quantities of the foods based on how much the user has ordered. The foods are going to be decremented a certain way. So anyone who now goes to the order page will see those new updated quantities.
Yep. So this is actually, well, kind of the database kind of encompasses all of these objects and everything. And this is a nice way to like isolate all the different logic too between your slide is a little bit better, a little bit better picture here, but it's a nice way to isolate the UI from the underlying logic, and then isolate both of those things from the data layer at the bottom. Yeah, so it's a great architecture for sure. And then integrations, we talked about doc parser. So that's used to parse the PDFs that come in with the order information. And then data loader, I heard you mentioned it. What was that used for?
So I could chime in here for a data loader, since I was the one mostly like integrating that with the Pantry system. And I'd say data loader is used for importing and exporting the orders that Pantry users have ordered from our system. So say like if a user orders, their order gets placed into a sort of CSV, and we need a way to get that out of Salesforce and onto like a spreadsheet of sorts for Pantry staff to kind of like checkbox off if a user has picked up the order or not when they come into the Pantry. Once everything is kind of like checked off inside their spreadsheet, like say at the end of the day, they would import that CSV back into our system through data loader and update everything inside the backend through that.
Oh yeah. So to give a little context on how exactly the data loader side of things and the import export is used by the Pantry staff, before the start of every distribution, one of the Pantry staff members will go on to data loader and just download an export of that day's orders. So they have a list of okay, we have order number 103 ordered 2 bags of white rice, 8 instant noodles, things like that. And then they have a place where they can mark off what was or who did and did not show up to pick up their orders. And what's really nice about data loader is it gives the option to select which specific fields to include in the export. So it allows us to anonymize the information. So there's no personally identifiable info on any of these spreadsheets that are downloaded and then given to the Pantry volunteers to mark off who did and did not show up. It's just simply the order number, what time they were supposed to show up, and the contents of their order.
So at the beginning of the day, you get all the orders.
Exactly.
You're going throughout the day. You're kind of updating the spreadsheet, and then
Exactly.
at the end of the day, you're reloading it. Now it says who actually showed up, who didn't show up, and then you can update the quantities as needed, right?
Exactly. And then at the end of the shift, at the end of the distribution, once they have a tally of who all showed up and didn't show up, just once again through data loader, they re-upload that spreadsheet. And we have an Apex trigger that upon the upload will update the actual food quantities and the status of each of the orders that patrons have placed.
Yeah, so you've got an Apex. Now, the reason for exporting it to a spreadsheet is it more for convenience to make it easier for the people that are going out and, like not everybody has access to or easy access to a laptop on the floor of the pantry while they're picking orders and things, right? Is that basically what it is?
Excellent question. So we're considering multiple options of how best to keep track of the food going out, and especially, making sure that, seeing as we already have this database of all of the orders and the foods associated with them, basically, how do we keep it as live as possible and as accurate as possible? And we arrived at the method with using data loader to download a spreadsheet because it allows for a spreadsheet which is easily accessible to anyone with a tablet or computer. And the pantry actually has a couple tablets that the volunteers can use to check people off as they show up. And secondly, it allows us to easily anonymize the information. So we can give access to these volunteers who we don't perhaps have the resources to go through and make sure that everyone has a Salesforce license and has been properly vetted. This is a way of just simply saying, okay, here are the order numbers for today, so that they can very easily check those off.
I'll tell you a funny story about that too. So you actually brought up something interesting about volunteers that brings to mind another project I had done where we had built a kind of a inventory management system for a charity that was handing out clothing. And they had a kind of a similar issue where you have volunteers that come and go, and you might have somebody that volunteers for a week and then you're never going to see that person again. So you can't just keep creating, hundreds of Salesforce licenses. And it comes down to, how do you get these people that are only going to be there for a very limited amount of time access to the data they need to do their work? And I will say you guys came up with a much more elegant solution than we did. So nice job with that.
Thank you. It is a tricky problem to make sure that we're, keeping everything secure, that we're keeping the database live and accurate, and also that we are, we're giving the volunteers opportunities to help as effectively as possible. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And then it looks like we've got a few scheduled jobs here as well. Expire orders, is that if somebody doesn't show up by a certain time, then the order is no longer valid? Or
so if they don't confirm the order by midnight, it's just a scheduled. I think it's literally called a scheduled job in Salesforce, and it'll just change the status from pending to never confirmed.
And then the triggers, I think one of them, the order sheet import, we kind of covered. What was the pending food insert one?
Yeah, the pending food insert. So the way Doc Parser works is it can only do insertions for its integration. So when it actually sends the pending food to our database, we need to sort of like associate all those pending foods together to say like, this is all part of the same invoice. So what we do is on the parsing as well, we extract that invoice number from the PDF, and then we send it over to Salesforce. And what the trigger then does is it applies that invoice number to each pending food object that's been inserted by the integration. So we separate the invoices on the pending table for the pantry workers by each invoice. So it's not just like a mishmash of foods. They can see like, oh, this is the invoice I put in on Monday, and this is the one I put on Tuesday, and handle it individually.
And then for the UI, and we know Visualforce, and then you use the combination of CSS and jQuery and Bootstrap.
Soumya, would you like to talk about this? I think you have the most UI experience.
Yeah, definitely. Working on the UI was so much fun. There were just so many elements that we had to get right. And there was so much that we already learned from learning about Salesforce that Visualforce pages already provided us with. All the Lightning components and all of Salesforce's already their UI was very, very helpful, especially in the beginning, for us to learn about Salesforce and learn about how to make the best UI for the pantry. I was also in contact with Ryan Choi, the director, and we worked out the best way to make the UI for this system possible. And part of that was using the logo that you see down there, and also like certain fonts and certain colors to fit the theme of the pantry. For that, I used CSS on top of what Visualforce already provided to get the colors correct and get the fonts correct and get everything centered in the best way possible and have it streamlined so that we had just one CSS for all of our system. And as far as jQuery and Bootstrap, they came in so handy. I don't want to give too many spoilers about our demo, but we have a lot of data tables and beautiful buttons, and connecting those with Visualforce pages and Salesforce's UI like really helped us get the best experience for the user possible, where we kept their best interests in mind, making sure that the problem we are trying to solve with ordering specifically is having people a very smooth experience of ordering, picking up, done. We wanted it to be that simple, and we wanted it to be that easy to navigate and browse. And jQuery and Bootstrap really helped with that, in addition to what Salesforce already provided. And yeah, so we just kept our best interests of the patrons in mind, and we kept our pantry styling sheets, if you will, in mind, and a little bit of color theory, and here we have our UI.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing the demo in a few minutes here. So yeah, custom objects. And I think some of these we kind of covered, but anybody want to walk through?
So another snapshot of the UI, if you will, on the bottom left of the screen over here. Just to kind of reiterate what we've been discussing with your flow diagrams and all of the other infrastructure that is in the system, this is like specifically for the ordering part of the system, so not necessarily the inventory management and all that we will be getting to in a few minutes or so. But essentially, this is the customer facing side of things, or the patron facing side of things. Initially, when the patron wants to make a pickup time and select their order, if they will, they'll be sent to this time slot ordering page. What basically that page is a bunch of radio buttons with all of the time slots that the pantry staff has uploaded to the backend. And the patron can select one of those, let's say like February 25th at 3 p.m. PST, and then they move on to the next page, which is the page that we see here. At that time, nothing is inputted into the backend as the patron's order, just because in case someone wants to leave the site or something, we want them to have that option and not have to deal with all the missing customer data and all that. But it might be a little faint to see, but on the top left, right underneath where it says food bag, it says scheduled for Monday, 1:10. Thank you so much for bringing your cursor there. For Monday at 1:10 p.m. So the patron has the option to just like see what they have, and they can always go back to the previous page, select a different one. But at the end of the day, they can select whatever items that they want, as long as it's within the limits, of course. And once they're ready to place their order, they're going to click order now. Now, this is where everything is going to move on to the back end to the custom objects that we've been mentioning. So we've got pantry order seat. It's the instance every single time we've got our patron placing an order. That's where their order is going to go into. And we want a few details of them, and we want their time slot that they picked. We want their email, because we're going to be sending them a confirmation email. And now when we do send this confirmation email, it is used by Salesforce's single email messaging. With that, the patron gets the order number, and then they get the contents of the order, and then they're told to confirm the order, which we'll be discussing very soon about the infrastructure of that. Again, super fun. And as far as the Visualforce pages, I've given you a little bit of a walkthrough of what to expect from the scheduling form VFP and order form VFP. Order form VFP, you're seeing a lot of Bootstrap and jQuery to get the tables working well. And all of these are just connected with one controller, which is the order form controller. And that's what's like connecting all the time slots and all of the pantry order objects, and like that goes into backend, and then we work with that.
All right. So confirmation and expiration. Same thing. We've got some Visualforce pages, and then some Apex classes that are the controllers that are kind of running in the background.
Yeah, confirmation page. just a standalone page where the user clicks the confirmation link that Somi's talking about, and it'll say like, oh, your order has been confirmed, or you already confirmed this order. So very simple. They get their customized link with the confirmation code and the URL. When you actually go to the page, the Apex code sees that URL, checks the confirmation code, checks the status of their order, sees if it's confirmed, pending, done, displays the correct information on the page based on what their order status is. You see the custom objects on the right there. That basically handles everything. You got the confirmation code, you got the order. And for anyone watching who doesn't know what those _ C's are at the end, that's Salesforce appends that to every custom object you make. So you can sort of think of it as just a confirmation code or a pantry order.
All right. And then manual entry.
So manual entry is one of the 2 ways that you can add an entry inside the inventory of the pantry. The other one being the invoice entry system. This would be used when there's like an item that you input it in, but it's not within the invoice. Or for example, you got like Snicker bars that were kind of taken from an anonymous donor, but it wasn't from like an actual resource that we have. And so we would input this in individually itself. So there we would have a standalone manual entry page hooked to our controller for that. From there, we have a list that kind of all completes given what we have inside the inventory and its invoices.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if I decide to be charitable and I run to the grocery store and buy an extra bag of groceries and drop it off at the food pantry, I'm not going to give you an invoice. I'm just going to give you the bag of food, right? And so that's where you would.
One of the unique features we have for this is that we used to have a table to display all the food items that is possible from like the food bank and from the invoices, also from the database that we have in the backend. But what we are currently in the operations to do is making like an autocomplete in order to show and display that. So it would make the manual entry much more streamlined.
Oh, nice. Nice. So actually, that's another good note is you're still adding new features and things to this as well.
Yeah, that's coming out in like the next patch, and I'm sure like the pantry staff will actually be really excited for this because it'll just really overhaul the entire manual entry system.
That is cool. That's actually one of the other things I think when we talk about just kind of the power of the Salesforce platform, it lends itself really well to that agile development. So you don't have to put the entire system end to end that works exactly the way everybody wants it to in one big swoop, and then you never touch it again, which is the way that we used to have to implement a lot of enterprise software back 10, 20 years ago. It's more of a let's figure out what the minimum viable product is that we need to release this now, and then we'll just make incremental improvements to it over time, and it's just going to continue to get better and better with each release. So,
and Agile has been a really core tenet of our development style and how we've gone about building this system, and it certainly has been an iterative process. When I say the full system, when I talk about the complete system, I mean the current version, the current live working version of the system. We are, I think, on our 3rd notable iteration of the system, and we are by no means done with it. We are, of course, adding more features, and seeing as we hope to distribute it, we will definitely be looking into what more we can add to meet the needs of specific stakeholders as we move forward.
So anything else on invoice entry?
Yeah. So when we first started the Pantry project, the very first thing they asked us to do was like create a database for them, like have it so they can input foods and items. So the very first thing we did was create an interface for how to actually enter those foods. So like Derek talked about the manual entry system, they also pitched the idea of an invoice entry system where you could upload an invoice, it would parse all the contents and put those items in the database. And so that's exactly what we made. Like you see on the slides there, you just have a Visualforce page, Apex class, and like we talked about earlier, sort of hooks up with the doc parser implementation. So the whole flow is Pantry worker uploads a spreadsheet, gets sent to doc parser parses it, sends it back to us. We display that in a table so that the Pantry worker can approve it. And once they approve, that's it. On to the next one.
And the nice thing about that is they're kind of looking at a screen, and all they have to do is sit there with the invoice and look at what's actually on the screen and say approve, as long as it matches up. And then I'm guessing that saves a lot of time as opposed to having to type everything in manually too.
Exactly. And they can edit. If anything came out wrong, they can edit, they can delete items, totally customizable for the pantry worker.
Yeah, and just adding on to what's already been said, having something like this invoice entry really makes sure that the volunteers have time to do other things, other more important things, and just like take this part of the headache away from them, and having the issue of, oh, what if there's some kind of manual errors in adding to the inventory? That this part of automation just like really helps with getting rid of all of that, and then they can focus on more important stuff like serving our community, our UC Davis community.
Exactly. And that's one of the things too, like you said, that you saw a little bit of a decrease in the number of patrons because of the pandemic, but that's only going to go back up as soon as everybody gets vaccinated. I mean, it's only a matter of time before you're back up to, 6,000 people plus that you're serving. And the more improvements you can do like that now, the easier it's going to get when more patrons start to come too.
And in a way, the whole agile development process, the whole MVP mentality really helps with all this too. But just because there's a less amount of people that we have to work with right now, it's been more of a blessing in that by the time that everyone's going to be back, all 42,000 UC Davis students and faculty will be back on campus, we will have a robust system in some way, shape, or form, and we can really, really try our best to make it fit everyone's needs. But right now, it's more a smaller subset of that number. And that way we can definitely focus on honing in all of these different things and doing bug patches and doing more releases like Derek just mentioned, and all of that right now. And then we can just really focus on getting it to that level by the time that we're ready.
Yeah, that's true. You can keep refining it now. And then, maybe when there's a lot more people coming in, you don't have as much time to add new features because people need to test them and everything else. But you've had this time to kind of get the bulk of them in, and you can do it in kind of digestible pieces too. How about the inventory grid?
Yeah, so for the inventory grid, building off on Somia's idea of how we were building and how we're trying to develop the system for iterative processes, the inventory grid is a one-page layout for displaying everything that we have inside the backend. From that page, we're able to add entries. We're going to be able to import entries. Additionally, we're also going to be able to view what's inside the backend as well, instead of just going to the platform and allowing the actual staff users to have a easy way to access wherever they want from like one page. So that would also include like deleting and editing the entries itself. To go a bit into like the design for, we actually had initial design where we're going to create like multiple pages for deleting, adding, and editing, but we wanted something streamlined for the pantry staff to use. We wanted them to use one page and have every resource they have available and not have to like cycle through like multiple pages at the same time. And so we came up with this one page format. From there, since it was one page, we were really going for that foundation and that iterative process. We found that, once we had this implemented, we went back to it later on when we're going to the second phase of our process or project, that we could easily add in like a time slot layout in order to implement the new features that we have. And continuing on, I could see this layout containing more features and being built on it repetitively. And so I guess that's what we have implemented there. And to the right, you can see like the objects that we have listed before, the confirmation code, the food C, food items, and a new one, time slot __C, which is just the object for time slots, and outgoing foods, which is food that are going to be processed to be placed into an order.
The more you can streamline, the better, because it cuts down on the amount of time people have to spend using the app compared to the amount of time that they're going to spend actually serving the patrons who are coming there and stocking shelves and everything else that they need to do to operate the pantry. So, and actually, I think at that point we're about ready for a demo. So,
All right. So this is the inventory management portal. It is really just a full suite of the options that we talked about. Here's the PDF upload, where staff members can choose a file to upload. The name and number, this is an example, are automatically filled in based on what the PDF is titled. Once a description is optionally added, the staff member can press submit. Give it a couple minutes and it will parse asynchronously and show up here. This is a quick example of what we might see from these invoices. The food item name, product reference number is specific to the local food bank, and then things like quantity, unit of measurement, etc. Things that are helpful for keeping track of it. Or once the staff member is ready, they can either confirm or deny or edit or delete, and then can put it into the system.
so is this is after an invoice was submitted, so the call's been sent out to the doc parser API, and it's parsing it, and then it's returning the values now, and this is what's updated and shown in this table.
Yes.
And now, where would manual entries show up?
Great question. So if we go back to the homepage here, under manual upload, here's the manual inventory entry. Here's the autocomplete table that Derek had mentioned earlier. You'll see that, so there are things that are uninitialized in the database, meaning that we've never seen them at the pantry, but we know that the food bank stocks them, for example. Then there are other things that we have seen before. And of course, the quantity and storage type, things like that, important information for keeping track of inventory. Let's say I'm a pantry staff worker and I just got an in-kind donation, and I noticed that we have some assorted canned meats in this, so I can actually just click on this and it fills it in for me. Or if I wanted to manually type it in, let's say I say, okay, there's meats that I got from this donation. Okay, I notice they're canned meats. I type meat into the search bar. I see that assorted canned meats showed up. I say, okay, this looks like the right item. Let me just click on that. I can add the description, the quantity, and any refrigeration that needs to be taken care of. And then I can submit, and then that's put into the database.
If it's an existing item and you put all the same parameters, like can be dry or whatever, does it just update the quantity of the existing item, or does it create a new line item every time?
Great question. In this case, if we already have assorted canned meats in the inventory, say we have 3 of them, and we have quantity 5 from this donation, it just updates to 8.
Okay.
But if we've never seen it before, it does make a new entry in that table. The inventory grid or inventory database is really where, like we were talking about, you can see all the information. This is where the staff can see just all the information they could ever need. Canned sweet peas are dry storage. We don't need a refrigerator. Here's the quantity we have in stock. Some of the information is not filled in. That is acceptable, but it's encouraged to keep track of as much information as is available. Here we have the threshold. This is where we give pantry staff the option to say, okay, we want to keep X number of each of these food items in stock at any given time, so that we always know that, just in case we have a backlog. Here we can see the can order. This is basically just a general restriction that staff can use to say, okay, regardless of how much is in stock, maybe we don't want anyone ordering beans today for whatever reason, so we're just going to take that off of the list of things that patrons can order temporarily, and then it can be very easily put back on. And then finally, the limit is how much of each of these food items that the patrons can order at one time. Of course, we do let patrons order multiple times over multiple days. When they place their order, once we do want to limit the number of each of the items that they can take at once, just to make sure we have enough to go around. And each of these can be easily edited right here with this handy pop-up.
Oh, that's cool. So if a quantity does somehow get out of sync or something like that, you can just go and manually update it. And I mean,
Exactly.
that does make sense. I mean, as much as I like Pop-Tarts, you probably wouldn't want me to just order 39 boxes of them for one and have that be my whole order and nobody else gets any. So,
Exactly. So yeah, we tried to make this as frictionless as possible, trying to make it as easy for the we tried to get a sense of what the pantry staff need to do on a daily basis, and then provide all those options as conveniently as possible. And then the last thing to show off is the time slots tab of this. Just like how we can store the food items, we can also store the time slot information. And this is also staff members just come in, they can add a new time slot, they can give it a name, obviously date and time, and then quantity, which is how many people are allowed to come during this time slot. And then again, another can order. You'll see that this is what it currently looks like. And there are actually up to 8 pages by now. Yeah, so basically it's just a way for the pantry staff to keep track of how many people will be coming in and when, all in just one place.
so is the quantity, is that based on the number of staff that'll be available at that particular time? So if there's more people available, I can have more patrons come in in reserve times.
Great question. So for right now, it's mostly a limit of, or the limiting factor is how many students can be served per minute or per 10 minutes. I think the biggest bottleneck is more just the time to make each of these individual bags.
Oh, yeah.
Because when someone places an order, we just throw them all into a bag and hand it to them. Ideally, it would be a matter of how many volunteers can come in at this time. Okay, we can let more people or fewer people come in to pick up food.
Well, that makes sense too, though, even like the way that you were saying it, because if something needs to be refrigerated, it's not like I can prepare their order 2 hours ahead of time and have it just sitting out on the counter. Like
Yeah.
it's got to be pretty close to when they're going to get there that I'm bagging it up. So, people they can only bag so many things at once. So,
Absolutely. And then, so in terms of the view of the orders, I'll give you a quick behind the scenes of for our custom order object. This is what it looks like. We can see the number of their order. Currently, we're at order number 1,207. This is the time that it was scheduled for pickup, or the time slot that this patron chose for pickup. Currently, it's pending, which means that they need to still confirm it. Which the video demo has all the information on how to confirm a time slot after you've ordered it. But once they've confirmed that, this will switch to confirmed. If they don't confirm by midnight, it does switch to never confirmed, just so that we put all the items back into the system and can have those available for the next person who needs food. There is a column here for was picked up. This is just this is really the interfacing point for the spreadsheet we mentioned earlier, where volunteers mark like Y or N for did they pick up or not pick up their order. We have some info on when the order was placed, so we can keep track of historically when are people ordering the most, so we can figure out how to better serve our patrons. And of course, perhaps most importantly, the actual contents. What did people order, so we can keep track of this all in one go. You'll notice like they ordered 1 Pop-Tart and 5 spaghetti. And it should be noted that these items were actually, the quantities were decremented in the system as soon as they placed the order. And like I mentioned, if they don't confirm their order, they'll get placed, or the quantities will be re-incremented. But if they confirm their order and pick it up, it doesn't re-increment the quantities, and we have a live and accurate number of or track of our inventory. One other thing that this does normally contain is the contact info. Just we do need to make sure that the people who are signing up are not spam ordering through our system. So we do have students use their school email addresses to sign up, but obviously for privacy reasons, I can't display those here. But just know that the system does have a way of making sure that it is students who are ordering, and that we don't see just a lot of people placing a bunch of anonymous orders and then hogging all of the food. And then, yeah, or any questions on this?
no, this looks great. I like your system of doing pending orders too, so that you can you can still keep an active account of your inventory even when people don't confirm or come and pick up their orders.
Excellent. And last but not least, the data loader side of things. I can quickly walk you through how we export and import. It starts with, and I'll walk you through the whole thing. So initially we can create a new task, and it's an export. And we're going to be exporting on Pantry orders. Here we go. So we created a custom SOQL query for getting the ID number, the order number, the time slot that was scheduled for this order, the column for noting whether it was picked up or not, and then the actual contents of the order from the Pantry orders, making sure that we're only taking confirmed orders. So orders that we know people have actually said, yes, I will be showing up to pick up my food, or ordering by the time it was scheduled for. So what I'll show you now is I'll show you just the export of all of these, and we can go through and select just the ones for today if we want, or we can just look at all the current outstanding orders. All right, so we will run this. It should take just a minute to download these, and then I can show you the spreadsheet that pops up. Perfect. All right, so it looks like it's done loading here. Take a look. We've got the 73 successes, meaning that there are 73 outstanding orders. I'll just download those quickly. And let me switch my screen sharing over to the file here. There we go. Yeah, so here is the spreadsheet that we get from this. You'll see the order number. So we can basically just keep track. When someone shows up, we have an anonymous way of keeping track of who ordered what. Here's the time they signed up for. You'll notice that this is a bit in the past. It's definitely past the 19th. This is likely because the orders or the spreadsheets have not been re-uploaded yet. This can happen if there's no food coming in over the course of a week for whatever reason. So whether the staff upload or re-upload the spreadsheet at the end of the day after distribution or the end of the week is really up to just how things pan out. Here in this column here, it's a blank slot for the volunteers to work with the spreadsheet. This, of course, works on tablet or laptop. You can use really your favorite spreadsheet manipulating app for this. What we'll use is Google Sheets, just to make sure that we're all editing the same document, keeping things in sync. So if I were a volunteer, maybe I would be checking people in, and I say, okay, can I get your order number? And someone would say 1122. I'm like, okay, perfect. Mark that their order they came to pick up, and I say, excellent, we'll have your order ready in just a sec, and then I can go back and grab the bag. Or if people are still building the bag, say, okay, the person who ordered number 1122 is here. Let's get their bag out. And I follow the same fashion, just checking people in. At the end of the day, I'll take a look back and say, okay, well, who didn't show up? All these people, so just mark no, they didn't show up. And once that's taken care of, once we've marked off who has and has not shown up to get their food, we can save the spreadsheet, close it, go back to data loader and re-upload it. I won't walk through the re-upload process just because that would be editing these values in our system. But rest assured that once the spreadsheet is re-uploaded through data loader, it will change the was picked up field of the Pantry order, and then subsequently the Apex trigger will either remove or keep the items removed from the database or add them back in, depending on whether it was picked up or not. And that is how the staff can use the system.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you for the demo and for sharing everything. I mentioned the Architect Academy Roundtables group. We'll share the link to this recording and also this PowerPoint as well there. a couple developer resources. So we mentioned Visualforce and Apex, also some specific data import and export things on Apex trigger information on Trailhead. And also, if you'd like to see a demo of the patron side of things, ordering, you can check that out. There's a YouTube video as well. So we'll share this, like I said, in the Architect Academy Roundtables group and also in the related materials down below. And with that, thank you so much to the entire UC Davis team. This was amazing. It was an amazing app. I can't say enough how awesome this is, and what a great job that you did. So thanks for coming on and sharing it and talking about it with me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, Tom.